Thank you, Luke. Before I start, I'd like to say it's a great privilege to be here to talk to you guys. And a massive thanks to Chris and Jack and Will and Luke, of course, for all the stuff they've done over the last 6 years. And of course, I nearly forgot David Crawford as well. We won't want to forget him, would he? No, but it's a fantastic event. And what I particularly like about it, and Kyndryl, we've been kind of with you guys for the last sort of at least 3 years, is the fact it's a non-sales event, right? It's about talking about the real problems in our world and how we're going to solve them. So my name's Ben Scowen. Background is software engineer, architect, run a couple of cloud services businesses within, Capgemini previously to Kyndryl and run the cloud practice there. The whole kind of point of what we're trying to do here is that technical debt, the innovation doom loop, everything that I'm about to speak to it. Where's my clicker here? Here we go. Sorry, apologies. Can I see the? Yeah, there we go. Sorry, apologies. Right. So really important thing here is, right, whether you're a small business or you're a large business, moving in the technology space is really difficult. Building your business with technology is really difficult, and that's because it's moving at an incredible pace. It's complex. There's a lot of it. But most importantly, it gets obsolete really, really quickly. And I think a lot of the choices you guys are going to, and ladies are going to have to make in this room can have a very limited shelf life. We talked about ChatGPT, what their announcement is in the last day as well, just an example of that. Things are moving incredibly quickly. And if you really want to think about this, it's never been so easy to create innovation. It's never been so easy to innovate, but it's actually incredibly easy to create technical debt. And that relationship between technical debt, and that could be data as well as technology and its actual manifestation, is really important to understand that relationship between the two things. And AI is going to supercharge that. Now, what I'm passionate about, what I want to talk to you guys about here is about product and platform engineering and how taking an AI-driven approach to it is really going to put the foundations in place for what you guys can do with your business. And Tor mentioned it in the last panel about getting those foundations in place. I think this is kind of almost a boring subject now, but it's an essential subject because without this, you're not going to be able to scale your technology. You're not going to be able to reduce your costs. So, first question is, where are you on the innovation doom loop? And to maybe ask that question, I have to kind of define it. So, if you think about all the resources in your business, whether it's your money, your people, your time, they have got all of that effort can be spent on innovation or technical debt. And if we actually think about this over a graph, if you take the graph here we've got here in the blue, looking at the resources that we've got over time, over say a 10-year period, at the very beginning of that startup, all of your resources are spent on that innovation. By year about 6, it's flattening off. By year 7, you've got a trade-off, 50-50 of your resources. By year 10, 75% of your resources will be spent on technical debt, not on innovation. Now, of course, businesses are all different, and they've been some businesses around for 50 years, some around for 5 years. So you have to do that maths for yourself. But the point here is there's a direct relationship between the two things. And understanding that relationship's really important to the next part of the topic. So then, where is the source of technical debt? Technical debt is a sort of broad description, and I do include data in that. And we talked about data-centric businesses. And if you think about the relationship you've got in your business, whether you are, say Ford Motor Company, where you've got business transformation, you're moving from being that petrol engine, combustion engine car company to being an EV company. You need business transformation. This is what's going to drive your revenue growth. All the companies I work with is usually about revenue growth. It's also about cost reduction, right? But that's where it's going to come. And digital, if we use the older term, was always the way that you reimagine yourself in that space. And of course, with AI and digital and data now, that's being very much transformed. That is the key source of all the technical debt, because that's where the one-off projects happen. That's where I've got to get to market. And it's important, as I will refer back to what Tor said with his company he was part of. It's important to get to market. Of course it is. It's very important. But if you build on shaky foundations, you're storing up a problem for later on. Now, the antidote to that is doing some form of cloud modernization, that transformation on an ongoing basis. And really the relationship between that and digital and business is what strands product and platform engineering. It fits all of those layers of your business. And it's understanding that relationship again, as well as innovation doom loop, I think it really brings out the answer to the question. So let's define it. What is the product and platform engineering from my perspective? And this has evolved actually over the last sort of 2 or 3 years as working with more and more businesses and seeing things evolve as they have done with AI so quickly. But the point here is, if you do this right, you will scale your digital while you're managing your innovation and your technical debt. You will align the business. All the old stuff, the business and IT aligned. This is probably the number one topic that just hasn't been solved within most, certainly medium to enterprise customers I meet, haven't really nailed how is my IT department going to work with my lines of business. I know there's a lot of good stuff happening in that space, but it's definitely not there yet. So I put it into categorized into 16 things. If we go back to the original panel actually today, which was talking about what's the role of the C-suite, and I know myself and David were talking out there about maybe he's got an idea of a fluid kind of C-suite. But irrespective of whether it's fluid or static, they've got to cover what's on this chart now, what's on the slide now. Because these topics here, and you don't often see it, often you get different departments or different areas of a business are very good at, say, DevOps, for example, or the agile delivery, all the old traditional ones. But they're not necessarily good at doing, using machine learning or agentic AI and things like generative AI, which have obviously come on the scene in the last year to a degree. And the answer is really on the left-hand side, right? It's all about, minimal viable product. How does that relate to a product and platform organization, an operating model? We talked about product actually in the first panel as well a lot. What do we mean by product? Do we mean the platform product? Do we mean the product you're building for your client? Or do we mean the internal product that's going to enable your finance department to do better cost control? So there's all these different elements, all these well-known, if you like, ways and approaches from SRE to FinOps. How do they all fit together? Can you combine them together to create your winning formula that will actually allow you to create that foundation and allow you to innovate at the same time as reducing technical debt? And that's really the point of this. So if we take platforms, these are obviously critical to your competitive advantage. Now, I know everyone wants to talk about, I will talk a bit about AI and how it's affecting this in a minute, but platforms are much, much broader than just an AI platform. And if you typically look in a company, I know that, for example, in Kyndryl, we had 300 platforms. We are down to about, I think it's about 40 now, right? We've reduced it down. But on this slide, gives you an example. From the bottom layer, you can think of your data center, the technology, the infrastructure in your data center as a platform. You can think about landing zones, whether they're on mainframes, whether they're on VMware, or whether they're in the cloud. All of that combined with the tooling that you need your engineers to use, depending on what they're doing. All of these are conceptually platforms. All the way up to the business platforms, obviously now your data and AI platform is critical, but so is your CRM, so is your ERP, so shows all the HR department. All these platforms add up to what power your business. And if we have different lines of business creating their own versions of these, then we get duplication on a massive scale. And what binds this all together is observability and control. And that's really what needs to come. And then the security that we've talked so much about in the previous panel is really bringing all those things together. So what at this point, right? That just gives you an idea of the things you have to do. But it's important to have that concept in our heads before we go to this point. So the operating model, and that's almost like, and I'm not, I won't take a shot at the big consultancies, but I'm not talking about what you might think of operating model in the sense, my background is, an engineer. I really am focused on, making things work. And so product and platform engineering operating model is really critical to this. So if we start at the beginning on the left-hand side of the chart here, we've got a typical IT procurement thing. The way you read this is you've got infrastructure at the bottom, you've got platforms in the middle, you've got digital at the top, and then vertically you've got your delivery teams and you've got your operations teams. IT procurement on the left, it still exists. It's still there, that kind of delivery mechanism, and it is also appropriate in certain cases, but it splits the suppliers up, it creates these clumsy interfaces. It's okay for technical debt. You can still manage it through that process. It's costly and it's slow. The second model, business-led, is really where we're at now. Certainly, we've been at for the last, I would say, 20 years. The cloud enabled that, which goes super fast. Just kill a bunch of engineers, get your product out to market, do it really fast, incredibly quick. And every business should have that kind of model in it because you need to get product to market. but that's the biggest source of your technical debt. And I'll talk more about it in a second, but AI is essentially supercharging that whole thing. And we talked about democratization for the hackers. It's also democratization of coding within the business, which might sound brilliant, right? Everyone can build code, but then they can also build lots of vulnerabilities. They can build lots of IP infringement. So that business-led model, very good for innovation, very, very good, but poor for technical debt. The third model and the fourth model are quite related. So you tend to see with businesses who are very onshore, they'll take the third model, where they've got a platform engineering layer, and then they've got their product teams on top. And that works really well. You're introducing concepts like DevSecOps, so you're building and running the services. Your engineers are involved in operations, security, all doing that. So all standard stuff. The problem is the cost of that is really high, and we see that a lot. So we built a great onshore team, and not all engineers, my experience when I ran my engineering teams in a previous company, they don't want to be on operations. They don't want to do that operational side of things all the time. But it's important that we do this. And then from the transformation-led perspective, that is really where we want to get to. So this is where we can start to offshore some of our operations. We can effectively reduce the cost, but we have handovers moving from a DevOps to an SRE kind of basis. So that kind of operating model kind of brings us into a couple of examples. The first thing to do when you want to do this, and again, this is something we don't often see, is create that exemplar, right? So if we get an example of what an exemplar might look like is, first of all, get that landing zone in place, get that control plane. Lots of people have done all of that, yeah? Then get that API integration platform, or whatever that product is, that platform that's going to enable you to deliver, your feature teams to deliver their products. And that simple operating model there gives you the ability to test out all your mechanisms, all the types of ways of working you want to do. And it might sound fairly obvious, but that is the start of getting things right. And it's not often, especially when we take on apprentices and graduates, they need to be immersed in this type of organized way. If you're joining the Army or the Navy, you will be rehearsed in the standards of how you do delivery. Yeah? So because we all potentially in this room know how to do this, doesn't mean that the people coming in do. And they'll just opt for option 2. And then you have to reorganize at scale. And this is from another customer of ours, where they had essentially 4 lines of business and they had a group IT function, and they were essentially all doing the same thing. And of course, the mantra was, well, if group IT provide me services, it'll slow me down and won't have access to the cloud and AI, and so it's all going to slow us down, so we'll keep these things separate. But what they're currently doing is moving to this model here, right? Where they've actually got a shared set of platform services. The platforms have become product, whether that product is development tooling or whether it's an AI platform in its own right. And that's all then available through an independent developer portal, which allows those lines of business to start focusing on the innovation and not the platform space. So what is the dividend of product and platform engineering? So if we start on this sort of graph, it's hopefully quite interesting. So if we take a traditional approach, right? Let's be honest, just getting on and working, not following a plan, can get you places. In fact, most startups, I would suggest, in most ways start this way. But the problem is it quickly becomes a problem in terms of your ability to, operational stability, changing, cyber attacks, all those kind of things. We need to make changes on an ongoing basis. And what we see here is, and this is really common, as time goes through, the cost of changing those systems, and if you think about mainframe as a great example, the cost of changing them now is incredible, right? And the people and skills to do those changes. And the changes you make are really, really dangerous, right? So it has to be done very, very sensibly. So the technical debt rises, the cost drives. Product and platform engineering is all about getting the basics in place and doing the fundamentals. It's about getting technical debt to oscillate. So you're often, on an ongoing basis, you've codified everything. Your cyber, you talked about minimal viable company, I think Fiona talked about it in the previous session. You built that into the way you're going to build all of your platforms, not just your AI platform, right? Not just your CRM. You're going to build it into everything. And that has a higher cost to begin with, and of course you're not in a greenfield situation, so you have to incrementally do these things. But then you've got the ability to operate operational stability, your ability to change it fast because you've got things codified. Really simple stuff, again, basic stuff that gives you the ability to operate in a much more sophisticated way, especially when we're in a world where demand and change is happening all the time. So, okay, so I suppose the question that's been asked quite a lot of times is I'm actually doing a session tomorrow called the AI Mind Virus. So if you're interested in coming in discussing that, I think I'm sort of in the middle of AI, right? So I'm obviously a technologist, so I love the concept and I use it in my own life for lots of things. But I think obviously from a critical thinking perspective, it could be a real problem for lots of people. So really the question is, how is AI and how should you introduce that into a product and platform engineering kind of approach? So what I did was, as well as obviously just having some experience of doing this and seeing what our teams are doing, I actually interviewed a bunch of our engineering teams across multiple customers. And because let's be honest with you, this is pretty organic, yeah? I know everyone likes to say we've got all an AI strategy in place, but I think you find that everyone is doing a lot of it behind the scenes. And really, it was pervasive, right? And I won't bore you with this because it's fairly obvious, and that's the unfortunate thing, it's actually quite unexciting. But AI delivery and testing, from use case development, test cases, acceptance criteria, all the sort of things you would traditionally done if you've ever been in that Jira board, creating all those things, it's really incredibly good at creating those user stories, those use cases, as long as you've got the context in place. From a software engineering perspective, yeah, it's obvious, right? I mean, I'm maybe older than quite a few of you in here, but I remember getting the magazines and copying code out of them and writing games, right, on my Spectrum 48K. I think software engineering, this is just another example of that, yeah? It's giving you things, but I think it's important to have a go at writing the code and then using it to improve it, not always writing it from utter scratch. So otherwise you don't develop that critical thinking. And I think that's what I do worry about. But on a positive note, one of the people we interviewed, the lady had been a project manager, and she was now a platform engineer. And she, in the space of 2 years, using AI, because it's a really good way of mechanism of training, has become a really quite proficient platform engineer. So it's accelerating the speed that people learn, and I think that's important. And then from an operational perspective, well, wow, this is where we certainly in my business, are seeing massive benefit, right? So being able to take these large data sets and look for vulnerabilities, look for cost savings. Is my Terraform code working properly? Is there any way I can actually reduce my resources in the cloud? All of this area here is where it can really give you some insight that you didn't get. Now, from another perspective, it is shadow IT on steroids. I think that there's probably nobody in this room that disagrees with that. It has democratized it. I have, myself and James, actually, we're talking outside about this. It allows people to very, very quickly get a handle on something without any of the deeper knowledge, which is great from a lots of perspectives, from a learning perspective, but it becomes dangerous when it's in the power of people who are in decision-making situations. So it comes back to the who should be on the board, who should be at the C-suite level. And I think that if you don't have a standardized AI platform, or at least try and attempt to do it, you're going to end up with you're going to end up with this whole technical debt spiraling out of control, because lots of people are going to create lots of things. So having a standardized approach to this and standardizing the way those product teams use it is going to be really, really important. Data sovereignty is another big one, right? So I call it enthusiastic data leakage. I won't mention what company it was, but I had an HR director talk to me about how that they had uploaded all of their policies into ChatGPT, and it was helping them tune them and make them better. Now, that might be okay, but it gives you an example of, was there any information in there that shouldn't have been uploaded? So that enthusiastic data leakage, data sovereignty, we're starting to see, let's get the AI boxes inside the data centers as well as in the cloud, so that we can actually bring the AI to the data. That's another sort of big observation that's coming here. And actually, in an event we did, tech leaders did about, I think it was about 3 or 4 months ago, it was a public sector one. One of the CDIOs there talked about this. He doesn't have enough money to spend on AI because he's spending all these money on technical debt. So they're just some of the observations that I think would be useful to take. So in summary, right, how do you get started? And I hope it's been interesting, because even though it's the standard stuff, right, it's not always happening. In fact, most of the time it's not happening. So my view is this: first of all, own it. Don't outsource it to a supplier or a third party. you need to own it as a business, whether you're an IT business or you're a bank or an insurer or whoever. Right? Own that whole approach to product and platform engineering and your application of AI to product and platform engineering. It's absolutely critical to do that. Assemble a small team. Find an exemplar, something you can do really well, quite quickly, hopefully innovative. When the example I showed you in the first, the simple model, we did that for a company called UK Power Networks. We have effectively connected the national grid up to solar farms. It allows them to onboard lots more energy into the grids because we allow them to manage the grid. It's a stimulus for the economy as well. That's a really innovative thing that people get excited about. How did you do that? Well, this is how we did it. We took a product and platform engineering approach. We're actually reusing those platform products on other projects now because we productized the platform layer as well as the actual products to the market. So do that. And then don't do all 16 techniques. And maybe you'll have 21 in your list. Maybe you'll have 4. But take a subset of those. Find out in your organization who knows how to do FinOps, who knows how to do cyber resiliency, who knows how to do DevSecOps, these critical things. And bring them together so you've actually got a holistic view to this. Because if you don't, you're going to end up doing this differently in different points. And again, that exacerbates technical debt. And then once you've done that, incrementally scale it out. Take what you know, organizationally scale it out. And it's really important to deal with the organization in terms of that operating model. And then the last thing I always think is important is ensure what you've actually built is persisting. The whole point of this is it's not a once and done, as Americans would say. It's an ongoing thing. It's a product. You've got to nurture it, you've got to look after it. And that product mentality in your business is critical for you to go to the next stage. So in summary, there's the 16 things. I'm really interested. We've got a stand upstairs. Very interested in your opinions. If what I've said was boring, I'm quite happy to be told that. And it's everyone's doing it. We don't need to know that. We're on the AI journey. Or is it interesting? Where are you on that journey? Where are you in your platform strategy? I'm really interested in always improving what we're talking about. But I really truly believe in this, right? And I think it's going to be something that if we don't go back to these kind of fundamental basics of how things fit together and work, it's going to be really difficult to scale out AI in a risk-free, economic way. So thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.